Thank you so much for joining me on this month's video podcast episode of HR in the Dark, where we uncover and expose the dark side of HR. And if you've been with me this year, you know that we've talked about some pretty dark issues in HR. And so I'm so glad that you're joining me this month for this month's episode. My name is Stephanie Lomax. I am president and CEO of HR Pro for You. I'm an HR strategist that helps businesses embrace HR. We focus specifically on small businesses because small businesses are more likely to violate HR laws and compliance requirements just because they don't know what they are. And so I'm here to help the small businesses do just that, get over that process of not understanding what HR requirements are and what they need to follow, and helping them put strategies in place so that as they grow, they're growing from a solid, legally effective, sound foundation. So again, I'm glad that you joined me this evening for the podcast. I can't believe it's year end almost. I mean, this is November, right? We've got, I don't know, a little over 30 some days left in the year. People are thinking about the holidays, but for small businesses, a lot of what they're focusing on is how to close out this year and evaluate employees in terms of their performance. Oftentimes, employees leave out of their performance review saying, gee, thanks. And it's not really a thankful attitude that they have at all. And they often are leaving out of that meeting feeling that way because they didn't really get much out of the review that just took place. They didn't really understand exactly how well they did or how bad they did, or they left out of there without a plan in place to go forward. They didn't get effective feedback. And these are all reasons why, just in general, the performance review process is scowled upon by everybody. The managers that have to conduct them, God forbid they have more than a couple of employees that they're responsible for reviewing. They got to try to remember all these things that happened throughout the course of the year. We'll talk about why that's bad. And then the employee, while they may come fully prepared to talk about what they've done all year long, their manager is not prepared to have the same conversation. Maybe they haven't been given an opportunity to even complete a self-evaluation or a self-review as a basis for the conversation to start from. And so they go in feeling jaded from the beginning because they're like, it doesn't really matter what I say. It doesn't really matter what information I have. I'm going to come out with the same outcome regardless. And I don't even know what that's tied to. I don't even know how to affect what I'm going to get or what I'm not getting, how to make that different for next year. And so having a strategy in place is critically important. Most small businesses, really not even small businesses, most companies' performance review process is poor. It's just shattered. It's not effective. It's not coherent. And the reason is because they don't have a strategy in place. They have not thought about what it is that they want to do in terms of their organizational strategy that then gets pushed down to department level or gets pushed down to a regional level or office level if you've got multiple locations. And if those things are different. And then on top of that, they also don't have, it doesn't go from the organization level to the department level, and then it never makes it to the employee level. And so not having that strategy in place is the reason why the performance process in general is just poor. And it seems to be just, laissez-faire, and it's a necessary evil that happens, but nobody really believes in the process. And so putting a strategy together is truly, truly important for any business, but specifically small businesses, so that they have something to grow from as they continue to add employees and staff to their organization. The reasons why they are generally ineffective: they are done once a year. So like I mentioned just a second ago, you're going to try to remember everything that somebody did over the course of 9, 10, 12 months. That's not happening. You don't remember that. And if you've got more than one employee, you certainly aren't remembering it as a manager. So, having it done once a year is definitely one of the reasons why the process is generally poor. It's not tied to anything specific. There's no metric that's clear that's in place. So if a person achieves X, then it equates to this this type of review rating. Most companies don't have anything like that. They're using the generic language of, excellent, meets expectations, needs improvement, or exceeds expectations or something like that. And it's like, what does that even mean? What are the expectations? We haven't even talked about what the expectations are. So this is the reason why there's such disparity when you go into the review meetings with your employees, because you don't even have what the expectations really are supposed to be, and they certainly don't understand. So you've got one mindset about them, they've got another mindset about them, and it just ends up not being an effective conversation in general. Um, the review is not tied to any competencies, or you don't have competencies in place per position, not per person, but per position. So if you have an accountant that's a level 1 accountant, which would be, let's say, an entry level accountant, their competency should not be the same as your executive admin. And the executive admin's competency should not be the same as one of your frontline managers. They should all have different levels of competencies that they're being evaluated on. Why? They require a different set of skills, and they should be evaluated at differently in terms of their level of position or their position in general within the company. So not having competencies in place is another reason why just in general reviews are viewed and seen as being completely ineffective. And then again, lastly, and I've kind of talked about this a couple of times, they're not in line with the organizational goals and strategies. Most companies this time of year, in addition to preparing for year-end reviews, are also, or should be also, planning their strategy for 2019. What are our goals? What type of business are we trying to go after as a business? Who are we trying to partner with? Where can we use some assistance? What type of staff are we going to need in order to fulfill the needs that we need to fulfill for our clients and be able to get them their deliverables? From there, you are able to assess what type of people you need. When I say people, I mean positions, not the person themselves, but what type of positions you need, and then what those positions require in terms of competencies in order to do the job well and do it effectively. This then allows you to be able to develop some type of strategy around how you want to evaluate them. Because if you know what your goal is, your end goal, you can work backwards into getting the type of positions filled and the competencies needed in order to achieve those goals. That is the reason why a strategy for performance management is needed. Here's a couple other things to keep in mind. And there's 3 specific review errors. There's more than 3, but we're going to talk about these 3 really quickly. When managers go in to review performance, typically what happens is they end up with what's called a recency error. What is that? The most recent thing that the employee did, that's what they get evaluated on for the entire year, because that's all they can remember. They haven't been keeping track of it or talking to the employees or giving feedback or soliciting feedback from the employee about their performance. So they're going to say, you know what, John did a great job on this project, so I'm going to give him a great review because this particular project he did was outstanding. Well, what about if that was the only thing that he did good all year long? What if he knew that, he was coming to the end of the review year and he better get himself in order if he wanted to keep his job, and some people do spike up their performance towards the end of the year or around review time in order to make sure that they get a good review. Well, that's not good, and conversely, let's say Jane bombed on a project or, just had a really poor last 3 months. You're going to evaluate her entire year's worth of performance on those last couple of months. That's not a good idea either. So the recency error is a very common one because most employers are evaluating people once a year, and that's all they can remember is the most recent thing that happened. The leniency error. This is when you say, Sarah did such a bad job and she had such performance that was up and down all year long, but I don't want to give her a poor rating, so I'm just going to give her the average. That is the worst thing that an employer could possibly do. Not be truthful about somebody's performance and giving them something that they should not get. What happens to your high performers that have been doing a fantastic job? They're going to get a review or an increase or a reward the same as Sarah, who had up and down performance all year long. That's a good way to lose your good staff and to lose your good performers. So you always want to make sure that you're not being too lenient, because you don't want to give a poor evaluation to somebody. And then the last one that we'll talk about is called the halo effect. They did such a great job, or they have a characteristic that you really, really like. And because you like that characteristic, you evaluate their entire year's performance, or multiple years' performance on that one characteristic. That is the absolute worst thing you can do, because if they have poor performance, but they have a good attitude, we got to find a way to match those things and marry those things together, or get them to be more in line with one another. Because certainly having a good character, or a characteristic that's a good trait to have in an organization, is important. But having sustained performance and being able to document that performance and show how that performance should be duplicated throughout the organization if they're doing well is more important. So those are 3 common errors that happen during the performance review process that we want to try to stay away from. And how do we do that? By having reviews or touch points throughout the course of the year more frequently than just one time a year. These don't have to be hour-long conversations. They don't have to be, full of paperwork or creating a paper trail of any type, but they should be performance conversations that are touch points where you're just checking in. Hey, let's go to lunch, or let's grab a sandwich, or let's talk for 15, 20 minutes about what you've got on your plate. And what type of support you feel like you need in order to continue doing well, or what type of support do you need so we can help turn your performance around. Those kind of conversations. This open door policy. We have it in our handbooks, that we have an open door policy. But do we really have an open door policy where employees can come and say, "Hey, I'm having trouble, and here's what I need," or "Hey, this is going really well. What do I need to do to continue on this path?" Do we really encourage that conversation? So we want to make sure we have these multiple touch points throughout the year. There are tons of ways to do that. Again, they don't have to be formally documented, but just having on your calendar every 2 weeks, every 3 weeks, once a month, that you have a touch point with everybody in your staff, and you kind of talk with them about what's on their plate, just so that you can get an idea of how to correct mistakes that are going wrong, or correct things that are going wrong. And then also, if you need to reward them throughout the course of the year, that's a great way to do it. To have it throughout the course of the year, so that you're not waiting till the end of the year and then they feel that they're not being recognized, or they're being taken for granted, because it's only going to happen once a year, when you could recognize them throughout the course of the year to encourage that sustained performance. That is what the basis for developing a performance management strategy is all about. We just scratched the surface, but certainly if you are looking for an HR firm to help you develop a more in-depth performance management strategy, that is what we do. Certainly make sure you reach out to us. You can find us on the web at www.hrpro4you.com. And if you are not already subscribed to the podcast, to get it delivered directly to you, make sure you do that. Same web address, /podcast. Next month, which is the last episode of 2018, I can't believe it, will air on December the 5th, 9:00 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. And we are talking about For the Love of Money. What happens when you are giving out unmerited and unwarranted bonuses to people that don't deserve them? It's all tied to this performance management process. So we'll talk a little bit more about how to make that more effective. I look forward to seeing you next month. Thank you again so much for joining. And I look forward to talking with you soon. Catch me on social media as well, all across the platforms on YouTube, Twitter, LinkedIn, HR Pro for You. Till next time, have a great Thanksgiving holiday, and I will talk to you in December. Bye-bye.